It was supposed to be a fresh start, a reunion fans had begged for. A second chance at the on-screen magic that once defined Korean drama history. But behind the cameras, behind the gentle smiles and rehearsed lines, something was different. Very different. When the news first broke that Lee Min-ho and Kim Go-eun were reuniting for a brand new project, the internet went wild. Memories of the king, eternal monarch came flooding back. The laughter, the tension, the way their eyes used to meet between takes. It was more than chemistry. It was connection. A spark that felt too raw to be scripted. But this time, that spark seemed muted. Whispers began on set. Something about contract clauses. Something about boundaries. And then the shocking leak. A clause, quietly tucked into the project agreement, stating that Lee Min-ho and Kim Go-eun must have separate dressing rooms, no shared waiting areas, and limited joint rehearsals outside of official direction. Fans couldn't believe it. The internet lit up with disbelief. Why would they need that? What happened between them? Isn't that awkward? The production team tried to brush it off. They said it was a standard professional requirement. But those who'd been around long enough, those who remembered the rumors, the tears, the silence that followed their first collaboration, knew this wasn't standard at all. This was personal. Kim Go-eun, ever poised, ever composed, walked into the first script reading with her usual quiet grace. Her smile was gentle but distant. She avoided cameras, avoided questions, and when asked about working with Lee Min-ho again, she simply said, "Every story deserves its second act." A poetic answer, but also a guarded one. Lee Min-ho, meanwhile, was calm, almost too calm. He spoke warmly about the project, about the fans, about the team. But when her name came up, his expression shifted, just slightly, as if trying to suppress 1,000 memories at once. On set, the separation was obvious. Where once they'd shared breaks, laughter, and long glances between takes, now they retreated to different corners of the world built around them. Separate trailers, separate stylists, separate energy. Crew members whispered that even the seating arrangements during read-throughs were designed to keep them apart. And yet, even in that distance, something lingered. A kind of tension that couldn't be written into a script. There was one moment, brief, almost invisible to the untrained eye, when their walls seemed to crack. During a rehearsal, their characters were meant to share a look, a fleeting, emotional gaze across a crowded room. And in that moment, the air shifted. The director called cut, but no one moved. Lee Min-ho's expression softened, and Kim Go-eun blinked, as if steadying herself. It was the kind of silence that said too much. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. The crew resumed their chatter, and both actors turned away, retreating back into professionalism, back into the safety of that contract clause. Behind the scenes, some insiders whispered that the clause wasn't his idea at all, that it came from her agency, that Kim Go-eun had insisted on it after past misunderstandings. Others claimed the opposite, that Lee Min-ho's management wanted to protect his image and avoid unnecessary speculation. Either way, it only deepened the mystery. What exactly happened between them that made boundaries so necessary now? Some fans think it goes back to their final days filming The King, when rumors of a real-life romance started swirling, and the media began following them everywhere. One article claimed Lee Min-ho had been seen visiting her apartment. Another said they'd been spotted dining late at night. Both denied it. Both laughed it off. But those close to the set said there was something real, something fragile that neither of them was ready to admit. And when the drama ended, so did they. Months turned into years. Their careers soared, separately. She became one of Korea's most sought-after actresses. He returned from his global endorsements and new projects with even more fame. But through it all, their names were never far apart. Fans noticed how often interviewers mentioned each other, how they both hesitated, just slightly, when asked about love, as if still haunted by something unfinished. So when news of their reunion broke, everyone thought, finally, a reconciliation, finally, a new beginning. But the reality was colder, more complicated, because love, once broken, doesn't always heal cleanly. Sometimes it scars. And in their case, that scar had been written into their contracts. An insider from the production said, the clause wasn't about ego. It was about peace. They've both grown a lot, and they wanted to make sure work came first this time. But even then, the phrasing raised eyebrows. If it wasn't ego, what was it? Fear? Regret? Or perhaps the weight of what once was still heavy enough to change the air between them? Still, professionalism prevailed. Kim Go-eun delivered every scene with quiet brilliance. Lee Min-ho matched her, line for line, emotion for emotion. And though they barely shared the same space off-camera, their on-screen chemistry was electric. Proof that some things simply don't fade. No matter how much time or distance is placed between them, even if they didn't speak between takes, their eyes did. And the audience felt it. That invisible string. Still there. Then came the press conference. The first time they stood side by side in months. Reporters watched closely. Every glance, every movement, every smile analyzed frame by frame. At one point, Lee Min-ho gestured politely, letting Kim Go-eun speak first. She thanked the cast, the director, and the fans, then paused, her voice softer. I'm grateful, she said, for the chance to tell another story. Some things are easier the second time, and some are harder. Lee Min-ho smiled faintly beside her, but didn't say a word, and that silence spoke louder than anything. Later, photos emerged online. One showed their hands, not touching, but close. Close enough to stir hope in the hearts of fans. Others noticed that when the cameras stopped flashing, Lee Min-ho's gaze followed her just a second too long. It was awkward. It was distant. It was human. People say time heals all wounds. But sometimes, it just teaches you how to hide them better. Behind the laughter and the acting, there are two people who once shared something real. Something that maybe, just maybe, they're still protecting. In their own quiet ways. Maybe that contract clause wasn't about distance at all. Maybe it was about safety. A fragile agreement to coexist. Without reopening old pain. And yet, every time they stand together on screen, it's as if the walls vanish. For a few seconds, the world sees not the distance, but the history. The love that never fully went away. As filming continues, fans are already calling it the most emotional reunion in K-drama history. And maybe that's exactly what it is. Two souls once intertwined, now finding a way to work side by side again, not as lovers, but as survivors of their own story. The contract might keep them apart, but the camera never lies. And what it captures between Lee Min-ho and